Welcome to Let's Face the Facts. I'm David Almeida, and I'm your host for this rewatch podcast for the classic sitcom The Facts of Life. I'm an actor in Orlando, Florida, and every week I bring you some of the greatest talent in the Central Florida arts community. Join us as we synopsize, analyze, criticize, and ultimately idolize the show, episode by episode. Hey guys, welcome back. It's another week, another Wednesday, another show, episode 110. Thank you for downloading and for pressing play. My guest this week is Rob Lott. Rob is a fellow actor-performer at theme parks and dinner attractions, very talented, funny guy. He also has a podcast of his own called The Leading Creative. And he has sort of a specialty expertise in leadership and particularly how it applies to creative endeavors. We talk about it on the show a little bit, as well as this new consulting firm that he started up called Blue Trumpet Creative. Now, before we start today, I have a few things to do. First of all, I want to welcome 3 new Patreon members, 3 new people officially who can now use the title Tutti Frutti. We have Just Joe, Helen D., and Thomas C. 3 of you, all within a week. I am thrilled, I am honored, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the family. If you want to be like them, you can support the show through Patreon. And remember, your $3 a month sponsorship gets you an additional podcast every month called TV Talkaholics, which is me and Matthew Arter talking about TV. Let's get back to this week's show, though. Rob Lott and I watched Season 6, Episode 2, A Slice of Life. And the original air date was October 3rd of 1984. I think we're ready to jump on in. Let's face the facts with Rob Lott. Well, Rob Lott, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here. I've been listening along the way and hearing all my friends do it. And I called you. I sent you a message. And I just said, I want to do the show. I want to be on.
You did, and it was delightful to actually have someone say it was you. You wrote like Psst, it's a secret, by the way. I want to be on the show, and that's great because I've been trying to go through the people that I know, just the people that I've worked with or peripherally or whatever. And this is probably going to be the longest conversation you and I have ever had.
It's true. We have worked together here and there in the past, but it's always been kind of like in passing that you would, we're starting up a rehearsal, you're coming in as I'm leaving, or we're just in passing. And so, I'm excited to have this conversation with you and, to talk about the facts of life, but also to get to know you better, David.
Oh, well, isn't that sweet? That theoretically should be my job as host, but I'll let you do it because I'm lazy. So I'll let you do the heavy lifting, buddy. So I'm thrilled to have you here. I'm thrilled at your desire to want to be on the show. So first thing I'm going to ask you, as I often ask my guests, is do you have a strong connection to the facts of life? Is it the TV show that brought you here, or was it only your deep, deep desire to be closer to me?
Truly, I don't have like a deep, deep connection to the facts of life per se. I do have a deep connection to the sitcoms of the 80s. Mm-hmm. And so, that was my formative, my growing up years. I got into like junior high and high school in the 90s, but so much of the person that I am and who I would become and what kind of person I wanted to be in junior high and high school was decided from the characters of the shows that I watched in the 80s. Like, okay, that's what cool is. That is what, this is what functioning adults look like, or non-functioning adults maybe. And so
who was cool in that list? Who were the ones you tried to emulate?
Yeah, I think, let's see, I would say like Tony Danza. Tony Danza was cool, right?
Mona Angela.
But then also like and maybe this was a little, it started in the 80s, but it was a little bit more 90s. It was like Saved by the Bell and
Oh yeah.
you know, those shows and stuff were like Zach Morris and those definitely were formative and certainly influential in the person that I would eventually hope to become. Never really get there, for sure. Never really get there.
Yeah, because I'm
certainly more of a Screech than a Zach.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I was going to say because Zach is of questionable ethical foundation.
Sure.
Is it a Facebook page or something that's just called Zach Morris is trash?
yes, for sure. I mean, but at the same time, and we should talk about some of this because there's in the episode that we're going to talk about today, I have some questions about some ethical questions across the board.
You and me both. So, Rob A. Lott.
Yes.
You know that the shows always start with me putting my guest on the spot and asking you to give a 2-sentence elevator pitch of what this episode was about before we go into my obsessive compulsive microscopic dissection. Would you please bless us with that?
Yes. All right. So Joe has a really great recipe for making pizzas she got from her mom. She makes one, somebody tries it, it's really great, says I would pay some money for that, and so she starts selling pizzas of her mom's recipe, but she gets in a little bit over her head, and now she can't keep up with the orders, and so she's faced with the dilemma that every young entrepreneur is faced with of, do I maintain the quality control, or do I go into mass production and diminish the quality in order to keep up with all the orders that are coming in? And in so doing, Joe and all of the girls learn some important life lessons.
Yes. Now, as I was watching this, knowing that you have your background in your podcast, which we'll be talking about in just a little bit, about being a creative leader, about your passion for leadership and a creative approach to it. As I was watching this, I thought to myself, ooh, Rob's going to probably have some opinions here about how Joe is managing this enterprise that is foisted on her. So I look forward to your input from that point of view.
Okay.
So let me do a little bit of my housekeeping here, where the episode that Rob and I have watched was season 6, episode 2, A Slice of Life. The original air date was October 3rd of 1984, was written by Jerry Mayer, one of the OG writer, producer, creators of the show, directed by Asad Kilada, our tried and true, steadfast in-house director, who is about to be completing his stint with Facts of Life, Rob, to move on to being the in-house director for Who's the Boss.
Well, my goodness. Another one of my favorites, as mentioned.
So I'm sure you looked at this and went, wow, a lot of the directorial choices I'm seeing are reminiscent of many Who's the Boss. You said that, didn't you? Say that to yourself.
I did. As I was watching, I thought, I wonder if there's a connection.
And Joe does remind me of Tony Danza in a weird way, but now we have a little bit of weirdness here to point out, in that this was the second episode broadcast for season 6, but it was the 4th episode filmed for the season. And last week's episode, which was the premiere, season 6, episode 1, it was actually the 5th episode that they had taped. And that is because this is when Nancy McKeon was in some contract talks.
Oh.
So at that time, they weren't sure if they were going to be able to work them out. But there are 2 episodes that were taped in which she does not appear. She's still in the opening credits. And then because they started filming in July, they had all of the stuff worked out. They got her on board, re-signed her, and then they were able to add her in. And then they just took those 2 without her and peppered them in through the season, and no one really noticed.
That's very interesting. Yeah. So they wanted to start with a full canon of cast.
Yes.
To begin with. That makes sense.
And they were smart to wait. Hopefully it was because they figured they'd worked it out. It wasn't going to have to be a very special episode. Wow, it sucks that Joe died when that orphanage burned down, you know? But Yeah, and the thing is, what they've alluded to, they've got still a little tight-lipped about it. I feel like it was in one of the specials where Mindy Cohn said that it was kind of happening unbeknownst to the rest of them. Like she said, it was kind of like, wait, what's going on? Why is she not here? And then when they heard what it was about, and I think when they understood what the money situation was, Mindy Cohn said their response was, "So fix it. That's so stupid. Like, of course." And it might be because Nancy McKeon came in a season late.
Mm,
They might have tried to say to her, "Look, this show is about to be canceled. We're bringing you in, and it probably isn't going to last." And
yeah.
then there was the writer's strike that cut season 2 short. They
Oh.
probably did get her for chump change, even though in hindsight, Nancy McKeon saved this
Mm,
sitcom really and truly.
yeah.
So for them to now at 4 years later, for her to go back to the table, you almost get a sense that it was her saying, shouldn't I be making the same as the other girls?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I've inferred and probably just, completely made up in my little pea brain as to what the situation was. But the good news is they were able to come to an agreement and we have Nancy McKeon for the rest of the run.
Great.
Um, well, are we ready to jump on in and
Ready.
start with the microscopic dissection, which I love to do so much? Oh, he's rubbing his hands. He's rubbing his hands together, making the sound. Yes. So we begin this episode in the living room house area. In fact, we never are in Edna's Edibles. We're only in the house area and other parts, which we will discuss. But it's kind of a busy time here. We've got
Yeah.
Blair sitting at the dining room table with some other students, clearly deep into studying. There's 2 boys and a girl there. Natalie and Tootie are quickly come into the scene and are planning to see a movie that night. But before we do, I always love to look at the other actors and the bit players in this. So later, when Mrs. Garrett comes in, we are introduced to the people. So we have 3 people. The friends are Sally. Sally is the woman. Ronald is the boy that is flirting with Blair, has got his arm around her. Clearly, he's her boyfriend of the week. And clearly, last week, Cliff, her boyfriend that she loved so much that she traveled to Iowa over the summer to meet his family. I guess Cliff is out of the picture.
He's done.
Yeah,
He's done.
and remember, she had a crisis last season where she had a full on dream about the future in the year 2000 about what her life would be like
Oh,
if she
wow.
were to marry him, because he was
Yeah.
being transferred and going to another medical school, and he said, "Come with me and be my wife." So I mean, they were serious with a capital S.
Until episode 2.
Yeah, exactly. What is that about? But again, typical 1980s sitcoms. It happens all the time. I complain about it constantly. You'd think I'd get over it. But the third guy sitting at the table, his name is Hack, short
Yeah.
for Hacksaw. And just quickly to go through the actors in this, the guy flirting with Blair, Ronald, Steve Schubert. This is the third of only 4 TV and movie credits. He really didn't do
Oh.
much acting, but he is now a modern abstract artist.
Oh.
And if you go to his website, schubertmodern.com, and that's Schubert with an SCH. This episode has him billed as SH Schubert, but his name is actually SCH, schubertmodern.com. You can see his artwork, and it's pretty cool. And then we have, playing the role of Sally, actress Lisa Freeman. And by the way, all of these people, this is their only appearance on The Facts of Life. They never come back as students or in this role again. But here's the thing. Lisa Freeman has just a handful of credits. Again, she didn't stay in the industry very long, not past 1995, but she is recognizable from Back to the Future 1 and 2. She plays the role of Babs. Babs is one of Leah Thompson's, Lorraine Baines, because she's not married yet.
Right.
She's one of Lorraine's best friends. The point when George walks up to them in the diner and is talking about his density, Babs is the friend with the ponytail sitting right next to her. And when we do the flashback in Back to the Future 2, when Lorraine's coming out of the dress shop with the dress she's going to be wearing to the dance, Babs is right there with her too. But
Wow.
but beyond this, I mean, she has, I don't know what drove Ms. Freeman to leave the industry. Hopefully it was a conscious choice on
Yeah.
her part, but it's too bad because that's a pretty cool little, hey, I was Babs in Back to the Future. It's like all the props girl. And then in the role of Hack, we have Tony Longo. Longo, and he certainly is. He is this gigantic, huge. I looked it up. He is 6'6". He is built like a brick shipyard, and he is clearly cast for type as being the sort of Italian Goombay football player, super jock, just beefy wall of a man.
Yeah. Yeah, he stands up, and Mrs. Garrett is just barely reaching. I don't know.
Because Charlotte Rae is 5 foot tall.
Yeah.
And he's 6'6". He literally has a foot and a half on her. And Tony would go on to do many other, he has like 154 credits over 34 years of movies and TV shows and soaps. And unfortunately,
were these among his first, or had he already done quite a bit?
His first credits were in 81. So this is very early in his career.
Okay.
So yeah, but as he got older, he did get thicker and bigger. He went from being the beefy guy to being the big, heavy, large guy.
Okay.
And he unfortunately passed away unexpectedly in his sleep in 2015 at the age of 56.
Oh.
And there is a fairly active YouTube channel still there that he had, Tony Longo, Longo. And in it, you see him trying to document a weight loss program, because at one point he had gotten very overweight and he was trying to lose 200 pounds.
Wow.
And he had it to lose. And he did lose, I think he got to 90. And then he also posts just jokes and goofy stuff. It's like you can tell he was a really sweet, nice guy.
Yeah.
And it's too bad he left us too early. But yeah, congestive heart failure and kidney issues. And I'm sure his weight did not help that situation. But here he is featured quite a bit as the big guy at the frat house. And he's got this kind of goofy shrug and this way of planting himself, looking directly out to the audience, physically.
Yes.
Straight onto the audience, not even doing a 3/4 turn to his castmates. He is just, here I am, and check me out.
I did notice that a bunch of times. He would always square himself flat to the audience, flat to the the fourth wall, so as to say. Yeah. He would always square himself off just for the punchline. Yeah. He would be looking at him, and now here comes my funny line, and he would turn flat out to the house.
Yeah. And then laugh and sort of shrug and all that. And it's a really fun characterization because there's a goofiness to him, even though he is this imposing physical being. You do get a sense, and he really likes Jo, and he is frequently and constantly flirting with her and putting his arm around her, even when she says, "Don't do that."
Don't do that.
We wouldn't do that nowadays, but even then, there is a sense that he doesn't pose a threat.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think for sure. Even I didn't get any kind of creepy factor from any of that. I think it was him being, hey, I'm a good guy. I'm a good guy, and I'm I didn't. There are times when I watch some of these shows and I go, oh yeah, we can't do that anymore. And
there's a lot of that in the Facts of Life. Oh my God.
For sure. Like there are even times when, even if it was acceptable then and maybe even comes off as okay then, now we would go, no, let's not do that anymore. But this was one that didn't hit my radar as something as being weird or off-putting or.
Yeah. Because the flirtations were typically just him putting his arm around Jo, maybe saying something, and Jo shutting it down and him retreating. He never went back at her. There was never, speaking of Back to the Future, there was never, "You're gonna marry me, Lorraine!" Right. But there was no sense.
not to get overly, I mean, I don't know what his backstory is per se, but I got the sense, especially like at one point, he pulls like both girls. I think it was Natalie and Joe.
Natalie and Joe, yeah.
Yeah, he pulls both of them in, and it was almost like, hey, we're friends, right? Like,
Yeah.
and not, it wasn't a sad moment or anything, but it was just kind of like, we're friends, right? Can we be friends? We're friends, right? And gave me kind of a sense of like, this guy doesn't necessarily have a place that he belongs, really.
Yeah.
And so when he put his arms around both of them, it was like, can I be with you too? Can I be friends? Can I be in your circle?
Or again, as a frat boy, he's got his fraternity brothers, but where you think to yourself, that could be off-putting to women to just have him be this. He's a hulk of a dude. That's intimidating. So it could just be he doesn't really have a lot of experience with women.
Yeah, it could be.
So yes, Natalie and Tootie are going to be going to see this movie, but they are not leaving that house, according to Tootie, until they get a slice of Joe's pizza, which they can smell, and everyone is saying, oh my God, this is going to be so amazing. Yeah, it's terrific. Mrs. Garrett comes home from her diet club meeting. Something we've known Mrs. Garrett to be watching her weight, but we've never known her to be going to a quote unquote diet club. So the assumption is Weight Watchers.
Yeah.
But she says she's doing well and she's trying to be good about food, but then the pizza comes out. And the whole episode, Mrs. Garrett's through line is, no, oh, it looks delicious. And no. And Charlotte Rae does what she can with it, but it's one of those things where I don't believe we ever have her this committedly on a diet at any point continuing going forward.
So is this the first of the many plot lines that were introduced but never come back to again?
Mrs. Garrett has been a taxi cab driver. She was the maid for the Drummonds on Different Strokes. So she cleaned their toilets and cooked their meals. Then when she started being a house mother at Eastland, because she's teaching a sex ed class, they suddenly dropped that she's a registered nurse. During her time as the dietitian for Eastland School, which is where she got promoted to the following season, she wasn't making enough money, so she became a hostess at like a Denny's or like, an all-night diner type of a thing. She has taken flying lessons on Different Strokes. She was in a karate class. She and the girls, when one of their fellow students took her own life, they said, we're going to start up a suicide hotline. Well, Mrs. Garrett, do you think we could all have time to... Mrs. Garrett was like, I'll make time. And so we never heard about that again.
Right.
It's been an ongoing thing for me, these last 109 episodes, for me to constantly be pointing out and keep track of how many different lives and careers Mrs. Garrett has had.
Maybe like as a house mother, I mean, I don't know what being a house mother pays, but maybe it's enough that she can just live the life that she wants to live, do the things she wants to do, and she just has to be around and available here and there,
Yeah, but at this point, she's not a house mother. At this point, she owns a gourmet food store.
That's right. Edna's Edibles.
Right. She's a business owner, and there's no real mention of the store. And you do have to wonder
who's running the store. Yeah.
I say that all the time, Rob.
Well, I mean, it is mentioned later when they're getting the pizza order comes in, and she answers the phone and she lists the name of the pizza place.
Yeah.
And then and also Edna's Edibles.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We're going to talk more about that too. That's another issue I have with this show. But here's a fascinating thing, Rob. For all of my complaints about stuff they introduced that comes out of left field, out of nowhere, we have had a Rose Polnicek pizza served on the show by Joe's mother, Rose Polnicek herself, last season.
What?
I shit you not.
Hey, so this was, I mean...
This is canon.
We planted this seed, and we're coming, and it's grown into a little tree.
Yes!
A small free. Yeah.
I am thrilled and delighted. It was when Joe's parents were in town because Joe was in a dirt bike race or something. Again, a thing that started and stopped and never happened again. Joe suddenly being a dirt bike racer. She has a motorcycle, but a dirt bike's a different animal.
Yeah.
Not that the writers of the show would know, but it was an episode where Joe was thinking her parents, who have been divorced for many years, might be reconciling. And it was, well, why don't I come tomorrow and I'll make pizza for everyone? And there is talk of how delicious the pizza was that Rose made. So this is a tip of the hat to the writers for bringing this out.
All right. Yeah. Well done, writers. Way to pay attention to your own show.
Yeah. But I do have a casting issue. Okay. Because the actress who plays Joe's mother, her name is Claire Malice, Malis.
Yeah.
And she is not a very ethnic woman. She's not, there is no touch of, she's supposed to be a weather-worn waitress from the Bronx. And she really comes off more like a Mary Steenburgen, Diane Keaton kind of a type.
Okay, I'm looking now.
Yeah, even her look, she doesn't look very Italian, but let alone Joe, this is the first time Joe ever says Sicilian Italian. Yeah. Doesn't she? Yeah, Sicily. And Sicilian Italians, with exceptions, those are the shorter, stockier, dark-haired, dark-eyed, dark-skinned Italian people.
Right.
Not your northern Italian who still have some, some Scandinavian crossover and all that stuff. But yeah, so little issue there. When we've met Joe's mother the last, I think we've met her 3 times now. Every time I've said, I love the actress. She is excellent. The chemistry with her and Joe, and with her and Joe's dad, played by Alex Rocco. So it's there is no question about the talent and the performance. I'm just like, from a casting standpoint, you were thinking it should be more of a an Olympia Dukakis type.
Sure. Well, and I would say that's something, to your point earlier, it's very fixable in a quick rewrite.
Make it, my mom was from Northern Italy.
Exactly.
Where they have and find out, and again, you can do research, take out your Funk and Wagnall's encyclopedia and look up and say, okay, so what is pizza like in Northern Italy? What makes it different and unique? Because chances are we haven't really experienced something like that here in this country.
'Tis true.
Yeah.
It's true. We have especially in the 80s, we had a very specific understanding of what pizza was.
Yeah, and a narrow lane, a very narrow point of view.
It has grown. Our understanding has grown of what pizza can be.
Yeah.
But you're right.
They do allude to something exotic, that there is an artichoke heart on each pizza. That's one of the, I believe Joe calls it
the artichoke heart.
Her mother's personal signature. That and 3 special cheeses shredded by hand. And, long story short in this scene is they say, this is so good, you should sell it. And Joe's like, nah, it's, it's personal, it's for the family. And you name the right price, suddenly $10 a pizza. And Joe is like, let's do this. The hack hands her $30 and says, why don't you deliver 3 of these pizzas to our frat house tomorrow night? And she does say, well, I do still have some of the ingredients and I got time to do it. And $30, wow. Do you know how much $30 is in 2020 dollars, Rob?
How much?
That is $75.
Okay.
That is $25 per pizza.
Well, see, and that does, because I wrote down here, $10 for a pizza, I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
And and so that makes sense. Whereas $25 for a pizza, if somebody were to say to me, Rob, that pizza that you just made, it's really good, I would pay $25 for one of those. So that makes sense. Yeah. I was definitely, so people were paying what, like $4 to $6 for a whole pizza back then?
Where I come from, we have a special type of pizza in the South Shore of Massachusetts.
Uh-huh.
I want to say that like a 10-inch pizza, so not a very large one, like not quite a personal, but a 10-inch pizza. I feel like there was a time in my youth where a cheese pizza was $2.30.
Wow.
And if you put toppings on it, that became like $3.40. Like
Wow.
the 230, 340, those numbers stick
Yeah.
in my head. That could
Yeah.
be from the late 70s. That could be that. But yeah, here's my litmus test. When I was a senior in high school, 1986,
Uh-huh.
Burger King had just come out with the chicken parmesan sandwich. That meal was I think the most expensive thing on the menu at Burger King, and it was $4.20 for a larger specialty sandwich, large fries, and a large drink, which now is a small drink. But
Yeah.
this is expensive.
Yeah.
That's a premium price.
Yeah.
And it is a little bit surprising because you're like, we will learn. The frat guys are like, do they even care what they put in their bodies? Really? When you're when you're of that age, when you're in college, really? But yeah, so that's what it all comes down to. So we move on now to the next scene. We are now in the frat house. I think do they call it Beta House? I feel like they have it's one Greek letter.
Yeah.
And they've got a group of guys hanging out, and they're all doing frat stuff. They're playing a poker game. One of them smoking a pipe. I don't know why I'm doing this accent. It's a guy thing.
Somebody was smoking a pipe, and I was like, "Why? Not one of those pipes, but like an old-timey old man pipe."
Yeah.
Yeah, and somebody's doing push-ups.
Yeah, that's the pledge.
Right.
That's the pledge. So the hazing is going on here. They refer to him as whale slime. And that is hilarious. You take those two words, put them on 80s TV. It's inherently funny. By the way, the pledge, that actor, his name is Bob Berger, Berger. Google him, and of course you get the animated show Bob's Burgers. But this is the 13th of his 15 credits, and he doesn't have anything on his IMDb after 1987. Oh. So he got out of the biz or retreated to the theater.
Yeah.
But it's too bad. He's cute and he's funny. He sells it, man.
Agreed.
He never walks upright. He's always on his knees.
Yeah.
It's just he's their punching bag, basically.
Yeah.
So we have frat in full frat swing of fratitudinal frativities.
And I love what happens. I love what happens on TV shows just in general, where if it's out of frame, then we don't know that it's happening. Mm-hmm. And so the pizzas are being delivered there at the front door to the frat house. And, the guys that are doing all the frat things, they are completely unaware that the pizza is being delivered until it is announced, hey, pizza's here.
Yes.
There's a whole bunch of dialogue that happens, when the doorbell rings or there's a knock at the door and that it's pizza on the other end, everybody in the house jumps up and goes, pizza's here. Let's go. But no, it was out of frame for those guys. So they just wait and continue on with their poker game and they're smoking of their pipes. And then it's not until Hack says, all right, pizza's here, that all of a sudden everybody's real excited about pizza.
Yes. So initially in my notes here, when Natalie and Joe come in with the pizzas, I was like, what is the set design? What is happening? Because it looks like a makeshift skyscraper is outside the door.
Yeah.
And I did have to go back and look at it. It's not that. It's the set. They decided not to have it be an exterior outside the door. They tried to make it look like some sort of an entryway.
Okay.
And in that entryway are some like lattice work screens.
Okay.
But the lattice is not on the diagonal like you would expect it to be. It is vertical and horizontal. So it looks like a bad, like Godzilla set of a skyscraper right behind the girls. And
so is it more of a dorm situation than a frat house?
Well, no, it's a frat house. They say explicitly at the beginning that it is a frat house.
Yeah, but they don't want to have an exterior.
Well, it's just meaning the set didn't want to have to put trees and shrubs and bushes. They put some type of a wall looking like there's an angle. It's just a set designer's way to cheat it and to not have to light something that looks too deep and all that. So that doesn't bother me if it's done well. This is not one of those cases. So the pizzas arrive. Hack is there. They get the pizzas and then they announce, hey, Victor, it's pizza time. And this guy, Victor, grabs one of the pizzas, pulls it aside, takes half of it and folds it in half like a taco and starts downing the pizza. I have to say, I have always wanted to do that, and I've never had the guts, and I think I need to do it now.
Why don't you do like right now?
Not this minute. I don't have a pizza handy, but
Okay.
but
I
should.
I have a firm rule that I no eating on podcasts.
It's true.
For the sake of the listener. Well, so I'll tell you, the only time that I have done that, I every now and then, not as much as of late, but I've run a handful of marathons, and it was like the day after a marathon, and I was still like my adrenaline was pumping, and my like I was just so hungry. And I'll tell you, I made a DiGiorno pizza, and
delivery.
No, DiGiorno.
Ah.
And and instead of cutting it into like 6 or 8 slices, I just cut it in half and folded it in half, and I ate half of the pizza right then and there.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And
so here's what I would say: it's only going to cost you like $10 to try it.
Yeah.
And
we have
$10 in 80s money is $75 now.
That's true. But I guess I should have prefaced all of this by saying that I watched this episode with great interest because pizza literally is my mostest, favoritist food in the whole wide world ever. I could eat it 3 meals a day, every day for the rest of my life and never get tired of it. So we need to talk about this actor who plays Victor, who is able to basically slam a pizza. Is that the word? Yeah. What's the word for?
Yeah. I mean, the equivalent of slamming a pizza. Of slamming a beer. This guy slammed a pizza.
Is that it? I don't drink, so I don't know the terminology. So
yeah, I don't slam too many drinks, but I have chug.
Yeah.
He
chug a pizza. I'm thinking of like doing a shot. Like, what do you do? Like the idea of he is basically doing, This actor, his name is Michael Zorek. And there was something familiar about him. I'm like, why do I feel like I've seen him before? He was in a movie very near and dear to my heart called High School USA, which was a TV movie about a high school. It was actually a pilot for a series they were hoping was going to take, and it never did. But the 2 romantic lead stars of the movie were Michael J. Fox and Nancy McKeon.
Yeah.
We watched it on my other podcast with Matthew Arter, and there were these 2 nerdy boys in the, of all the archetypes that they're trying to cover in a high school. The 2 nerdy guys, it was Crispin Glover, like his first or second role, and this kid, Michael Zorek. And they're delightful. The movie is delightful, by the way. If you want to relive, it's maybe a little bit early for you. You're probably a little young because you didn't go to high school then. But I looked at it, I'm like, oh my God, so much.
But I would have watched it and I would have been like, that. I'm going to be that. When I
grow up, when I'm an adult at 17. Yeah. So yes, but the big thing was, does Victor, does the pizza get Victor's seal of approval? Yeah. And he eats it, and he just and they're all like waiting. It's
they'll gather around to watch him do this.
It's like Mikey and Life cereal. What is he gonna say with bated breath? And finally, he just looks and says, "This is life-giving." Yes. And
when he said that, I was like, that is a line that holds up to this day. People are saying, this gives me life.
Very ahead of its time. That was not said a lot in the 80s.
No.
I was there. We did not say, this gives me life, this is life-giving. That was not a thing. Nuh-uh.
He started it. He, again, planted the seed, and now it has grown into a modern-day pop culture hit of a phrase.
Trendsetter. We would say, this is grody, or this is bitchin' or something. I don't even know. But I put down in my notes, disgusting, ? No, he is my hero. Eating the pizza that way. Just want to go on record saying that. So with that, with his stamp of approval, and the others start eating it too, Hack is like, good, we want 6 more pizzas for the following night. At this point, Joe was like, no, no, guys, it takes time and it's a lot of startup money. At which point Natalie is like, whoa, 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 Joe, this could be the start of your own business. So Joe is like, I don't have the ingredients. And Natalie says, I'll invest in it. I have some money. And you know what? Tootie will invest too. She has $25 that you can have. And Joe was like, wait a minute, why are you investing Tootie's money? And Natalie's just like, I manage Tootie's money for her. Don't worry about it. So Joe is like, I don't know. Joe is initially reticent. Let the record
Yeah.
show, Your Honor. And
Yeah.
they walk
Which
over.
is actually a little bit like Joe is usually like let's go, let's do things, let's, like she's in action for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Or Joe's not a very gray character. She's very black or white. She would either be
Yeah.
like, yes, let's do it, or no, I draw the
Yeah.
line. This was too much work.
Yeah.
But with that, Joe, with this extra money, and now the order being increased to 8 pizzas, Joe is like, well, I guess we're in business.
Yeah.
And that's where our group hug comes in. The group hug with Hack.
Yeah.
So now we move on to our next scene.
Had we established that Natalie is the money manager at all? Has that been established in any prior episodes?
This is a little sensitive.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to speak to the time.
Okay.
And I'm trying not to be offensive from modern standpoints.
Yeah.
But Natalie is Jewish.
Okay.
And therefore, without it being explicitly stated, Natalie's the Jew and the Jews are the money people.
Right.
We have this thing where oftentimes Natalie is a little more interested than the others, or more concerned.
Yeah. Okay.
A girl comes in and says, I just got engaged. Natalie's like, step aside, like Joan Rivers. Let me see the ring. How'd you do?
Yeah.
And so it's never, ever explicitly stated, but I have many times, maybe I'm the anti-Semitic asshole who's always picking up on this stuff that's not even there. But it has come up before. But Natalie is not necessarily the money person. If anything, Joe, last season with the opening of Edna's Edibles, Joe in many cases has become the de facto bookkeeper, manager, slave driver, as far as, come on guys, we got to do this. Our profits are down. We've got to sell croissants. We got to cut expenses.
Yeah.
So Joe has really more consistently been the money person. But this whole thing of Natalie taking Tootie's money and managing it, there is a little teeny trace of discomfort on my part, because I'm like, I don't know 100% that the writers weren't secretly thinking, well, we can do this because she's,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, or to your point, like maybe they weren't necessarily thinking about it, but it was just kind of the thinking of the time, and nobody really questioned it. And so who's going to be most likely at the time to be concerned about money and be wanting to pay attention to the financial stakes? Well, it seems that would be most likely Natalie.
I think that's a lot of what it is. And it's simply a matter of, in those days, the line between archetype and stereotype was a lot blurrier.
Yes. Yeah.
And similarly, Tootie, who rarely, they do, to their credit, they rarely give Tootie sassy black woman talk. That's something they've actually been consistently good about avoiding. But there is a point later where is this episode where Tootie says, have you been acquainted with the word jive?
Yes.
Is it jive? Is that the word she says?
Yeah, I want to say jive.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we're wrong when I get there, I'll correct myself. But the
Okay.
whole thing is that, and that is just simply, it was like a way to give Tootie her own personal way to say bullshit. Really.
Right.
So
it seems that Joe is much more entrepreneurial than the others. But then here comes this opportunity, and she's the first to be like, I don't know.
Well, and the thing is, this is the part of the rewrites I will be sending back in my time machine to the writer's room. All they needed to do was have Joe say, look, this was a real strain for me. Remember, I'm still trying to help Mrs. G manage the store, and I've got my studies. This is talked about a little later by
Yeah.
Tootie.
Yeah.
But if Joe had just said, ugh, it's a lot of time and I really don't have that much extra time to give to this, but then the opportunity, it's like, oh, okay, I'll make it work. I guess I'll stay up late. Who needs to sleep? That could have been a nice little way to at least make it. They're not denying her entrepreneurial spirit, but they're also honoring her sensible side of understanding limitations of time, space, and all that stuff. That would be my little tweak to this whole thing. So then the next scene, we move into Rob, a space we have never to this point previously seen. The kitchen in Edna's Edibles.
Really?
This is the second episode of season 6. All of season 5, we were in Edna's Edibles. We never saw the kitchen. This is the first time.
Wow.
Yeah. Natalie's helping Joe make the pizzas. And in the process, the other girls kind of pass through. Mrs. Garrett has another moment of, oh, I'm going to my die-in club. So she's trying to, this running gag of temptation for Mrs. Garrett. And then Blair and Tootie do pop by. They're about to go out to do something. And Natalie's like, we need some help, Tootie, jump in. And Tootie's like, I'm not involved in this. And this is where Natalie says, yes, you are. And Tootie is not happy about it. And she's like, I had plans for that money. How could you do that? And Natalie's response is, well, you have the chance to invest in a startup business. And, anyhow, Natalie is fairly harsh and unapologetic. Not even I'm sorry, but... Think of it like this. Natalie was like, Tootie, face reality. The money's gone. And get chopping. Wow.
And we all think that this is, well, we don't all think this, but as we're watching the studio audience, quote unquote, they think that this is hilarious. They think this is great. Now again, so she had not been established as, it would be different for me if she had been established specifically as Tootie's money manager, that they had worked this agreement out. But the fact that she just kind of assumes the role and takes her money.
Yeah. And takes it out of her sock drawer.
It would be different if they had already said, okay, you manage my money, invest it wisely. And then she comes back and says, hey, I invested it. And you're now running you're co-owner of a pizza place. Okay, that's different. But this was...
Yeah, so easy to fix this in the writing, to say, Tootie just gave me $25 and was saying she was thinking of investing it or, wishing she could have some more. This is the perfect opportunity. And then, when it comes to this, but we do have to talk about what is the business model here in terms of, we are, and at one point, Natalie even says we're 40% of the business and all that. It's like, whoa, time out. I'm making the tea with my hands here. What... Let's look at what a business model might be. First of all, Joe is running this business, and I don't have the money for ingredients, which is what necessitates the investment from Tootie and Natalie. But it's like, even if, why did they have to invest in the business when it was, can you lend me your $50? I'll make the pizzas, I'll deliver them, and when they pay me for the pizzas, I pay you back. It's still my business. It's just a loan. And it's literally a 24-hour loan. You're not even going to notice that your money's gone.
Yeah.
So that's weird. That's a very sitcom-y. We're friends and we're in business now. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
But then we have the other problematic factor of this is Edna's Edibles kitchen. Mrs. Garrett comes breezing through like, oh, pizza's delicious. She does make a comment about, remember, a good chef cleans as she cooks. Okay, the line should have been, okay, girls, remember, I've given you the kitchen for 3 hours, not a minute longer. It had better be spotless when I get back from my diet club meeting because I have to start rolling the pastry to make the croissants.
Right. Right.
And I'm doing this as a favor because Joe is running this business and getting too big for her britches in future scenes about she's going to be a millionaire. We're going to be rich. I'm going to be in the cover of magazines. It's like, girl, you have hitched your wagon to someone else's business. This is Mrs. Garrett's kitchen. Again, fixable. If it was
Yeah.
Mrs. Garrett has given her the kitchen for X amount of time.
Uh,
And
yeah.
then, well, how are we going to make, because, what's coming up is they get an order for 15 pizzas. Well, how are we going to do that? And it's like, maybe I'll beg Mrs. Garrett to let me use maybe I'll do it after hours.
Yeah.
The idea is
Yeah.
that if there was some limitation to the kitchen time, I would have been able to, this would have been much more palatable for me because I
Because to
don't
your
know what
point,
the end game was, what she
yeah,
thought was going to happen as the business grew.
we've already established that Edna's Edibles is a real thing that's going. This is our first time in the kitchen. We don't know how the kitchen works for Edna's Edibles. This
No.
is our first time being in there and seeing it. So yeah, it does raise a lot of questions.
And
What's
these
going on in
girls,
there?
yeah, and these girls do the cooking. These girls
Yeah.
help with that. And speaking of which, therefore, they know their way around the kitchen. Why is Natalie chopping mushrooms with a meat cleaver? And then Joe says, you're chopping them too big. And then she starts chop, 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 chop. Now you're chopping them too small. And then Joe takes over and Joe starts cutting with a meat cleaver. And it's like, what? This is one of those, does nobody on that crew know how to cook? They've never? It's just shocking to me that they wouldn't have a true cutting knife.
Yes. Yes. And again, and forgive me if I'm jumping ahead again, but
No,
I
it's
have
fine.
a little shout out to the as we get going on this, and they're making more and more pizzas and getting more and more frazzled and behind. A shout out to the props people for some really great unfinished pizzas.
Yes.
Really great stuff.
Some botched attempts later that they look great.
The one that drapes over the lid.
Yeah.
Clearly when you look closely, this was something that was built to be done over and over and over again, and it looks very fresh and new.
Yeah.
But the prop is clearly, when you watch it happen, everything stays on, but it drapes over. I was very impressed. Well done.
I agree. Yes, that in addition to the burnt ones that appear later. And and the last thing for this scene, and this is where your point of view is going to be interesting. What kind of a leader is Joe? Everything Natalie does, she is doing wrong. And Joe is just like, oh, you're shredding the cheek. Come on. And she's doing the hand gesture of, duh.
Get out of the way.
And if you look at if you think of the words on the page, if you take away her delivery of them, it's, Natalie, you're chopping them too small. Well, now they're too big. Why don't you just do the Honestly, Nancy McKeon could have made kinder choices.
Agreed.
As far as, I don't know anybody who responds to that type of leadership. And it's 3 times the magic, the comedy rule of threes, where 3 different times in this scene, Joe is angry at Natalie for fucking up this beautiful, thing that's untouched. It's like, okay, so let's think about as creative leaders, Rob, as you the authority, what are some other ways Joe might have encouraged Natalie as her staff member?
Yeah, well, I mean, the job of the leader is not to do everything. The job of the leader is to make sure that it gets done. And so along those lines, also, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And so her job needed to be that Joe's job was to build and maintain influence with Natalie to help her learn how to do this well. Yeah. Now, I do think also a lot of the leadership study that I have done, leadership and creative study that I have done, came from a response to terrible leadership models of the 80s.
Mm-hmm. That does not surprise me in the least.
Yeah, and so nobody was writing about or teaching about leadership and all of that until you get into the late 80s and 90s, when it's like, oh my goodness, we're burning bridges left and right. These organizations that have grown really super big, they're now crumbling and falling because they're not being run well. They're not being led well. It's more of a flash in the pan. How do we make this sustainable? And so a lot of the teaching and the writing and the demonstration of good leadership came as a result of the bad leadership models of the 80s. So I don't know that Joe had any other model to point to of going like, this is what I always see is when I think of boss, it's somebody who's yelling at their employees, somebody who, so she didn't know, but
and it is on brand. I will say it is on brand for her character that Joe is blunt, tells it like it is, and she is a no bullshit kind of a character.
Yeah.
However, you're talking to your friend.
Well, and so this is the good model comes in later with Mrs. Garrett.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
she
absolutely.
comes in later, and oftentimes in these, it's going to be the voice that comes in later that speaks reason and says, "Hey, what have we learned here?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I do believe we don't learn a lot from great leaders whenever we have great leaders in our lives, of bosses or we've been hired to do a thing, or we are part of an organization, maybe a volunteer organization, and somebody is at the helm and leading that. We don't learn a lot from the good ones. We learn so much from the bad ones.
Oh yeah.
And so when we're paying attention to how it's done wrong, that more often than not, we can pick up from, lessons learned from it being done poorly. So I would say, little devil's advocate, we've learned a lot from Joe as to how not to do this.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, okay. That's a great positive way to look at it.
Yeah.
And positivity typically isn't a component in this podcast. We're just snarky and negative and critical. Let's take a step back, Joe, in that, Natalie, you're chopping the mushrooms too big. Okay, chop, chop, chop. Now they're too small. Come on. It's a pizza.
Yeah.
Mushrooms on a pizza. The component of flavor, the chemistry of, okay, when you bite into this pizza, it has to be the perfect blend of the savory mushrooms and the salty cheese. It's like, girl, get the job done, for crying out loud. Or teach, like you say, you're not there to do it, you're there to lead. Say, Natalie, let me show you the right size that I like the mushrooms to be. Or again, take herself out of it. Natalie, let me show you, this is the way my mom always chopped the pizzas, chop the mushrooms that makes them so delicious. And then take yourself out of it. And then it's like, okay, we're sticking to our brand. This is, okay, the brand is, this is my mom's pizza. Let me show you how my mom makes it. And can you emulate that more? That's...
Well, the last part that I would say, like, one of the things that I try to live by is delegate results. Don't delegate tasks.
Oh, okay.
So instead of delegating a task of, hey, chop these mushrooms, that's a task. But chop these mushrooms this way, this size, that's a result.
Oh, okay.
And
that's good.
Yeah. So you want to get the result. Here's how I need this to be when it's done. Do that. I don't care how you do it, but it needs to look like this, feel like this, be like this when it's done.
That's a great approach. There you go. That's the type of thing that you would know that I would not. So we go into the next scene. It's a little bit later, and they have completed the job. Now everything is like, okay, we can breathe, a sigh of relief. It's all good. Hack shows up. He picks up the pizzas. That also helps. They didn't have to deliver them. He flirts again. Joe rebuffs him. Phone rings. You mentioned before. They say, Mama Rose's Original Bronx Pizza Incorporated. Oh, and his edibles. It's like, bitch, really?
Yeah.
So it's an order for 15 pizzas to be delivered somewhere else tomorrow. Tootie, thank God, is the voice of reason and says, 50? Are we set up for that? That's what she says. That's verbatim. And Joe says, yeah, we just do what we did today, only twice as much. And then this is where suddenly pipe dreams and fantasies and like we lose sight of the reality where this must be how Sarah Lee felt. We're going to be so popular. We're going to be in the Today Show with Jane Pauley. Joe says, I'm going to buy my mom a condo. And basically the final moment of this before we go to commercial is we're all going to be rich. Yay!
And they jump in the air, freeze frame.
Yep. Punch. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, So, so that's what we have, and it's like using someone else's kitchen during the off hours. The most you've made is 8 pizzas. We are not even 3 days into this business. Come on.
This is quite a situation they've gotten themselves into.
Quite a predicament. So we are at our commercial break. And Rob, during my
Yeah.
commercial break, this is where I like to get to know my guests a little bit better.
Oh my
And with
goodness.
you, I have the extra special treat of I really don't know anything of what I'm going to get for answers here. But it's
All right.
just a simple travelogue through your life that has brought you here to Central Florida, where you are or where, like me, you at one time were
Yeah.
a longstanding full-time employee of a major theme park.
Yes.
And so tell me, let's leave us turn back the clock. And where were you born?
I was born in Ohio. I was born in Akron, Ohio, and I grew up in a small. When we moved there, it was a village that became a town that then became a city of Greene, Ohio. And
Wow.
yeah, Greene was forever great and growing as I was growing up. And but we yeah I grew up in Greene, Ohio, went to Greene High School where our colors were orange and black.
Wow. Wow. Halloween must have been cray cray.
That's
Wow.
right, we had a great time.
Yes.
um
So
so
what got you initially first into performance, and then where did you study?
yeah, okay, so I am of a rare breed of people, and it wasn't until I got to Orlando that I met other people like that, like myself. And I'm of a rare breed of people that just always knew what he wanted to do. I always knew
Oh,
what I wanted. I knew that I wanted to be in show business, on stage, some way, shape, or form, on stage, backstage, running the spotlight, pulling curtains, on stage with, singing a song, tap dancing. I just wanted to be around it. I just wanted to be there and do something with it. And so,
and where did that start? How did you come to that so young?
well, so my parents, my mother, both my parents were musicians.
Oh,
um
okay.
so I would see them a lot of times performing. I would see them on stage, and I think part of, especially my dad, he was the over the summer he would like be the camp director for a local youth camp. And so he did all of the fun, like, skits and the variety nights and all of that stuff in the evenings. And so my sister and I would be along for those over the summer. Again, very formative years, and we would
Yeah.
see that. And so I would see my dad in front of these audiences every night, making them laugh and getting them to cheer and applaud. And I was like, oh my goodness, I mean, that looks awesome. I want to be in. I want to do that.
And it's
So
in your blood, so of
exactly.
course, that's great.
So
So where
it
did
was
you
one of those
study?
things. Well, so that's just so as I was growing up in school, I was in, elementary school, and I loved the art classes and music classes and all that stuff. And I was like, when do I get more of that? I know what I want to do. When do I get more
Mm,
of that?
yeah.
And they said, well, not really until you're in junior high, or you're going to get more art classes and band
Oh,
and choir and all that stuff. I was like, oh, okay. So I get into junior high, and there's a little bit more. I start playing the trumpet, and I have choir and things that I'm part of, and I go, hey, I love this. Can I just do this all the time? How do I get to do? And they said, well, really not until you're in high school are you going to get to do more of those classes. I'm like, okay. So I get into high school, same thing, where I go, okay, I'm here, I'm in high school. I'm ready for more art and music
yeah.
classes. And
What
they
what
go,
is this
well,
history and
right.
algebra
I
bullshit?
don't
Yeah.
need any. I don't need any of that. I know what I'm going to do. And so they said, well, really not till you're an upperclassman in high school will you get to. Now, sure enough, I did create a senior year for myself where it was musical theater. We had a musical theater class at my high school, musical theater, play production, choir, band, and then like show choir. There was part of that, and that was pretty much. I think I had an English class, which was fine.
Wow.
And so that was my day all year long, and I was like, this is what I want to do. I'm ready for this. And that was when I was a senior. But my friends, when I was a junior, who were seniors, they had gone on to study theater in college. And I would call them and I'd go, hey, how is it? Is it amazing? And they go, well, we're really not doing theater classes and for another couple of years. We're getting all of our gen ed stuff done. I was like, okay, I'm done. So I was all set and ready to go to Ohio State. I was going to study music there. But a friend of mine said, "Hey, there's an audition down in Orlando to work at Walt Disney World. Do you want to go to that? I think you should go to that." And so I was like, "Okay, well, I'm all set and ready to go to Ohio State, study music, but I'll go to this audition and we'll see what happens. And I won't put all my eggs in that basket. I'll just try once."
And if you
And
get it, it would just be a year or two anyway. And you go back.
exactly, not a big deal.
How
Yeah.
long could that
So
last?
how long? Yes. So yeah, all of that to say, I went to the audition. That was in September of the year 2000. I went to that audition. I got the gig. I started out as a puppeteer at a show called Legend of the Lion King.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, and so I actually, my identity, and I did a whole bunch of puppetry stuff all around Walt Disney World for the longest time. But I was also getting together with some guys on our own, and we were three other guys. We were singing barbershop stuff and like doo-wop rockapella kind of stuff. And we were doing that on like a Monday or Tuesday night. And we ended up getting an audition to go to Hong Kong Disneyland. They were looking for a barbershop quartet to open Hong Kong Disneyland in 2005. We went to that audition, and like a song and a half in, we weren't very good. Like a song and a half in, the casting director like waves his hand, and I'm for sure I'm thinking he's gonna be like, "Thanks, guys, that's all we need. On your way."
Yeah.
But instead he goes, "Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you guys to Tokyo, the group that's in Tokyo. I'm going to send them to Hong Kong. It's a 13-month contract. All of you need to say yes, or none of you can go. You have the weekend to decide and figure it out." And so, yeah, it was a very quick turnaround, but I ended up saying yes and going. So I kind of dropped my roots in Orlando that were only about 4 years old at the time. But I went to Tokyo and got to sing barbershop harmony there in Tokyo Disney Sea, and got to do that for a little while. And I came back, and my friend, his name is James Silson. Some
So
of your
wonderful. I have
the
worked with
wonderful,
him.
yeah,
A
he's
brilliant
lovely.
puppeteer.
He said, "Hey Rob, do you want to teach puppetry now that you're back? Do you, all those shows that you worked on as a puppeteer, do you want to teach that?" So I said yes, because I needed a job. And so I started teaching a show called Finding Nemo the Musical. But the fun thing about it was, anytime somebody who was missing from rehearsal, I got to step into some of those roles and play them in rehearsal. And over time, the creative team, production team was like, "Rob, is this something that you want to do?" And I said, yeah, I would love to do it. And so we kind of figured out a transition. I went to a couple auditions and figured out a transition for me to go into more full-time performing and be an emergency sub to teach the puppetry for them. So I did that, and I ended up getting a show called The Hoop-De-Doo Review at Disney's Fort Wilderness and Campground. And that is where I have spent the majority of my time since 2013.
Man.
Yeah.
And that was all based on, I've had several Nemo people here and other theme park workers where, like I said, it's just, I'm just going to be here for a year or two. It's the gig isn't going to last.
Yeah.
I'll waste a year in Orlando, and then 15 go by, and it's like,
Right.
oh, okay.
Well, here I am. Yeah, a friend of mine, when I first got here, friend of mine gave me some advice and said, "Listen, Rob, you're ambitious. Clearly, like, you want to do some things. I would set a limit as to how long you're going to be in Orlando, because it's really easy to stay here. So set a limit for yourself as to how long you're going to be here." And so I said, "Okay, that's really good advice. I'm going to set a limit of 5 years. I'm going to set a limit of 5 years for myself." But I had this caveat, and this is what has gotten me. The caveat was, as long as I'm doing something new and interesting. If I'm not doing anything new and interesting and I get to 5 years, then it's time for me to go. Well, I've had like 17 different jobs over the last almost 20, now 20 years of working here. And it's just every time I turn around, I was getting to do something new and interesting. And so that it's been great. The ride has been fantastic. But you're absolutely right. I did not have plans or thinking that this was going to be a long-term location or long-term career here in Orlando. But yeah, that's what it ended up being. But I also got to work other places, do other things. I do the pre-show for the Sea Lion show over at SeaWorld. I do that. And
you've directed for Central Florida Community Arts.
Yeah, I've gotten to direct some for SeaWorld, and do some creative development and things for Disney and stuff. So it's being here, there's just so much there has been so much opportunity. to just, again, try new and different things all the time. And so I remember being out of town, and I was coming back, and I drove up over the hill, and I saw the Orlando skyline, and I had that sense of home.
Oh,
I realized,
yes.
you know what? First off, at this point, I have lived in Florida longer than I lived in Ohio. And so I realized, oh, you know what? Actually, this is home. And when people ask me where I'm from, when I'm not in Florida, they say, "Where are you from?" I say, I'm from Florida.
Yeah.
But when I'm in Florida and people say, "Where are you from?" Because nobody's from Florida.
No. Nope.
Say, where are you from? Well, I'm from Ohio. It was a great place to grow up, but I was ready to get going on doing some things that I wanted to do, and Ohio wasn't the place that was going to let me do that. So Orlando has been.
So that you are as accomplished and as talented as I know you to be, and to be like, and he never formally studied beyond high school. That's amazing.
But to your point, I because I did, I got here, and on all of my breaks from being a puppeteer, I would go and watch all of the other performers. I would go and watch the street mode. I would watch the stage shows, and in my evenings and my time off, I would go into the parks and see how other people were doing it. Not just Disney, but all the other theme parks in town, and as well as, you know, again, we were talking earlier about bosses and going, okay, we learn more from when it goes well, and we also learn from when it doesn't. And so I was cataloging all of it and going, okay, I want to make sure I always perform that way. I want to make sure I never perform that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You learn from the bad. You take the good, you take the bad.
You take them both, and there you have a life in theater.
You have a career. Who knew?
Right. Yeah.
So before we go back to the show, there's two other things I want to bring up. Is I tout you as being this authority on creative leadership. So give me your 2 to 3 sentence elevator pitch of your podcast, The Leading Creative.
Sure. Yeah. The Leading Creative podcast exists to bridge the gap between leadership and creativity. Leadership needs great creativity, and creativity needs great leadership. They go hand in hand. They are in tandem all the time. And it's because, you know, you can be the most creative person in the world, have such out of the box thinking. And everybody goes, "Oh my goodness, you're so creative. You have all new ideas all the time." But if you don't have a leadership ability to be able to get those ideas done and to fruition, then what good is that creativity? And vice versa. You can have read all the books, listened to all the podcasts, been to all the conferences on leadership, but if you have nothing new to say, nothing new to add, then what good is that leadership and influence ability? So specifically, my podcast is for especially like young, brand new people who have found themselves, they are creatives who have found themselves in leadership positions. And I talk about all of the mistakes that I made in my early years of being in leadership positions. And so kind of saying, hey, don't do what I did. Here's what I've learned. Do it this way instead. So it helps young, creative leaders go a little further faster.
It's great. I I didn't get into it until after you were on our mutual friend Sarah Hanshar's podcast. And that was when I was like, oh, Rob has and I had seen some of your posts on Facebook where you would post interesting, like, you know, kind of your deep thoughts about ideas about leadership and all that. So I'd seen that. So I kind of already knew you to be that guy, but I didn't realize that you were also doing it in podcast form, and then hearing you talk. And I've greatly enjoyed the episodes. And so now tell me, what is Blue Trumpet Creative?
Oh my goodness. All right. So, you know, 2020 has been the year of pivot for everybody. And
a little
bit. So, you know, it's Blue Trumpet Creative is the result of people going, hey, Rob, you know, kind of your thoughts on leadership and creativity. It's time to monetize that. And so, you know, people have been asking kind of on a regular basis, hey, can I pick your brain on this? Can we work together on this? I want you to collaborate. Can you come work with my team on kind of their leadership and creativity? And but also, would you be willing to take a look at this show, take a look at this script, and punch it up, or just tighten it up or whatever? So Blue Trumpet Creative was created kind of as an umbrella organization for any kind of coaching, consulting, or creative development that I do. And on my podcast, the Leading Creative Podcast, you can hear the whole story of how Blue Trumpet came to be. But working with your team also to help kind of drill down on core values and kind of the mission and what are you going to do and how are you going to do it? And people like us do things like this, and just helping to answer those questions. So that's what I'm working on. That's what I'm doing. And that is all under Blue Trumpet Creative.
I will be sure to post a link to the podcast in the show notes for this episode, as well as on the webpage. But I strongly recommend that people give it a listen, because it's really fascinating. And I don't think it just needs to apply to creatives. It's just, I think, a good course in leading.
Well, and that's the dirty little secret about the podcast, is that I believe everybody, again, if leadership is influence, then we all have influence somewhere. And I also believe that everybody is creative, in that we all have the ability to make something where there wasn't something before. And so even though I tend to put it through my filter of theatrical design, more often than not, I have a lot of people who contact me and they're like, you realize like this is applicable to other industries. Yeah. I'm like, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I do realize that. Don't tell anybody. This will just be our
or tell everybody, so that they'll say, we want a piece of it. We want to hire Blue Trumpet Creative to bring that to our organization or our business, or our ill thought out pizza side hustle.
Yeah, come on. What is going on with
what you could have done for Joe if you had been around in 1984. So the perfect segue that was to get us back to a slice of life and this kerfuffle, this mishigas, this insanity that is this crazy pizza business. We come back from commercial, back in the kitchen, and now we are in the thick of it. And I don't mean a deep dish pizza. I mean the flour is hitting the fan, both figuratively and literally, as we watch Joe and Tootie and Natalie make the 15 pizzas. So this is the next day. This is day 3, correct? Because we had the first day when they first did the pizza.
Yeah.
Then we had the order for what, 5?
3 or 5? 3?
It was 3. That's
3.
right.
Said here's $30.
Yeah, that's right. It was. So we had day 2 was the order for 3. Then we had the order for 8.
Yeah.
So this is now the 15. So this is day 4 in the chronology of the episode, but this is only the 3rd day that this business has existed.
And it is going like gangbusters.
Or busting something, that's for sure. So they are running around like crazy, and it's kind of pandemonium, and they don't have enough pans, and they run out of sauce. And there are some burnt and ruined pizzas on the counter, which is where we learned some of the sauce went to. Where is the slicer? I don't know. It's like, you have a pizza business. How do you lose track of the slicer? Tootie ends later in the scene using scissors to cut the pizzas.
Oh, Tootie.
We have things like them taking the pizza pan out of the oven, forgetting the pot holders. Oh, I'm burning my hands on the pan. How wacky. They are 3 hours late for the delivery already at this point, Joe says. They are 3 hours late. So at the sort of pinnacle of it is the phone rings. Joe answers the phone, but then the timer goes off. And so she's like, grab them out of the oven. And Tootie's like, I'm in the middle of cutting. And Natalie's doing that. And Natalie's like, I got to make more time. So Joe is the only one who can get the pizzas out of the oven. So she extends the phone cord across the counter, across the kitchen. And as she is trying to maneuver her way around Natalie is shaking the flour into the bowl to make more dough. And in typical crazy slapstick sitcom fashion, the flour just starts flying all over the kitchen. Like Natalie cannot stop shaking the flour even as her arm is being moved.
She cannot stop. And this reminded me of those black and white infomercial parts of like, has this ever happened to you?
Yes.
And then
Oh
you're
my
like,
God.
have you ever been trying to make a pizza and pouring flour in, and then all of a sudden you just can't control the flour anymore?
Oh my God. So true. And honestly, Mrs. Garrett literally walks into the kitchen to be doused in flour and then just turns around and walks out. That is, she does nothing else
Yeah,
in this scene. And
yeah.
I gotta say, considering Mindy Cohn is flailing that flour and Charlotte Rae is behind her, she gets her good. Like it is funny. It's like
And
for
I
how
mean, this had to be, my guess is this had to be, they probably weren't going to do this a couple of times. They probably weren't going to
oh
reset.
no.
It was, definitely, we got one take to get this right.
Yeah.
So good on them for getting Mrs.
Yeah.
Garrett. I did notice that it's funny watching it again, because I think they thought we were all going to watch the flour go everywhere. But instead, if you just watch the actors, it is very funny that Mrs. Garrett sees what is happening and still walks into the midst of it, doesn't try to stop any of it, sees what's happening, walks into the middle of it, turns around and walks out.
Yeah.
And she doesn't feel the need to put a stop to it, even though, again, this is her kitchen, and she
Nope.
says, you will clean along the way. No.
She was like, I have to brush the flour out of my hair, or my weigh-in at my diet club might be a half an ounce heavier. It's just, it's insanely crazy and fairly contrived, really. When you watch it more than once, as we do, because of the opening credits, you're like, come on, really, guys?
If you just watch the actors and not what they are dealing with.
Yeah.
That's a lot of superfluous, unnecessary, continuous movement.
Yeah. So another thing about Mrs. Garrett's entrance and exit, and like we're talking about, she serves no purpose other than to walk in and walk out. Here's another thought that came to me at this point in my note-taking, my copious note-taking, is that why not offer the pizzas through Edna's Edibles? Why not have, gee, Joe says I have no money for ingredients. Where in the world could I ever acquire ingredients when all I work at is a gourmet food store?
Is there anybody I know who could maybe help get this thing off the ground?
That's just it. So why not have it be a joint venture with Edna's Edibles, where it's like, okay, of the gourmet foods we offer, and they do offer a wide variety we've discussed, to the point that it almost doesn't make sense. But it's like, oh, we offer gourmet pizzas now, and have Joe maybe get a cut of every pizza. And maybe that could be what motivates Joe to be like, no, I got to sell 8. No, I got to sell 15. Maybe that's Joe's thing for getting too big for her britches and pushing it too far too fast. But it's the idea of, that as a gourmet food store and catering company, they have to have rules where if someone walks in and says, I want 3,000 quiches tomorrow, they would have to say, we're not capable of making 3,000 quiches.
Yeah.
We can do custom quiches in addition to what we produce for the store inventory. We can make 20 large ones in a 24-hour period with X amount of notice, and that's the limit. After that, we take no more orders. We cannot help you. There has to be some component of that. You can't go to a cake baker or a bakery and say, I need 50,000 wedding cakes in 3 days. They would say no. So I'm just saying this would have also been an obvious way to sort of dampen the chaos factor, and then having it be incorporated into Edna's Edibles offerings. Now the use of that kitchen is justified.
Mm-hmm. There's also an opportunity of, what if the pizzas become more popular than Edna's Edibles? What do we do now? There's a little bit of a Edna's Edibles. Who's in charge here? The pizzas are selling more than the edibles. Yeah.
And then it becomes, if Joe starts cutting corners, then it becomes, Joe, you're not just selling out me. You're selling out you and your mom and that recipe. This is a double whammy that you're doing in the name of just making a few extra bucks. So, I think we're doing a lot of good fix-up, punch-up here on this. I think the writers will really appreciate it when they get our shipment from, again, the time machine I will be purchasing at some point in the future. So after all the crazy dies down, everything is done. They get everything in the oven. So it's like, okay, what is not made, it is done and completely and assembled and being cooked. So there's this moment of, yeah, okay, we can breathe a moment. Well, after that, Blair strolls in. God bless her. Lisa Whelchel is so damn gorgeous. She is wearing these peach-colored satin pajamas and high-heel slippers. She looks like she just stepped out of a Lauren Bacall or a Katharine Hepburn movie, as far as you want to show a girl with a few bucks how she lounges around the house in extremely expensive loungewear. She just stepped out of a 1930s movie, and she is gorgeous. Don't you agree?
I do agree. I do.
Okay, so who was your I forget. I have to ask every straight guy I have on the show. Who was your crush on the show?
Well, honestly, and I think it was due to the entrepreneurial spirit. I had a little crush on Joe.
You are not alone. In fact, the vast majority of straight guys I've had on, possibly all of them, I haven't tallied, and I should because there's so few of you, but it's like most guys that I have asked that question are always like, yeah, Blair was the pretty one, but she was high maintenance and difficult and snobby. And it's like Joe was the earthy one. She was no nonsense. She told it like it was. And if your car broke down, you knew she could probably fix your carburetor on the side of the road.
I would need that. I would need that. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So no, you are in very good company. That many straight men are like the same way. They're like, you would think it would be Blair, as Blair is presented to us as the object of the desire of all men, when in fact Joe really had a lot stronger following. So Blair, in the course of all the crazy, had taken the phone away from Joe, and she hangs it up and says, okay, Beta House just called, and now they want 25 pizzas for their football party on Monday. And Joe is like, yes, we're doing it. Natalie's like, what? And Natalie says, I want to be bought out. She and Tootie are both like, we're out. We're suddenly the naysayers, and they finally speak up and do address the question that we're all thinking. They say, we have lives and school and working for Mrs. Garrett. There's no time. So Joe is disappointed. She says, maybe I was nuts to think I could run a pizza operation and go to school. And Blair says, well, don't think of it as a failure. Think of it as a learning opportunity, which is something I'm sure you would say, that we as actors have there are no failures, there are no mistakes, only learning opportunities and lessons.
For improvement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. But Joe quickly goes into her Bronx mode, particularly how she gets with snobby Blair, where she's like, it wasn't a failure. This was successful. And you know what? I'm going to make those 25 pizzas if I have to do it all by myself. So in defiance, Joe says, no, I'm making it happen. And I'm not even going to worry that Tootie and Natalie are no longer a part of the business. All right. Yeah. That is on brand, where, Blair says one little thing and it sets Joe off, and Joe gets into defensive mode. That's actually very on brand for her. So, okay, I'm going to move us on a little bit faster clip here. Next scene is in the living room. Tootie and Natalie and Blair are sitting around with wondering what Joe is doing in the kitchen, because this is the night the 25 pizzas are due. How in the world is she doing it? They haven't even gone anywhere near the kitchen, probably because they don't want to get their head bitten off. But Joe comes out of the kitchen calm and cool and collected. Natalie asks, did you make those 25 pizzas? She's like, yep. How? And Joe says, mass production. I bought some frozen pizza crusts, some cans of pre-made sauce, some cheese food. It's not quite cheese, near cheese.
Is that food?
Yeah. And so they're like, isn't that dishonest, calling it a homemade pizza when you've done this? And she's like, hey, this is a home and it was made here. And that's where Tootie says, does the word jive mean anything to you? And it's like, that language that Barbara Billingsley talked in Airplane 4 years ago?
It was 4 years prior?
Airplane was 1980, yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. So Natalie suddenly says she wants back in on the business. Again. What? You found a way to make it more profitable? More money? Yep. I still want to be a part of this now.
I'm in.
It's like, okay, Shylock, bring your bag of coins with you. And anywho, then we go back to the frat house. The two of them deliver the pizzas. A lot more people there because this is a football party. But basically, they all jump in, they eat the pizzas, and they don't seem to notice the difference. So we think this is going to work.
This is very interesting. It made me wonder, again, going back to the writer's room. I mean, it makes complete sense that they would notice, but was the episode coming up short? Was the episode coming up short on time, and they needed to take it in a different direction? Because I was fully expecting, and maybe that's the writers going, well, they're going to be expecting that, so let's not give it to them. But I was fully expecting, what was the kid's name who ate half the pizza in one bite?
That'd be Victor.
Victor. I was fully expecting Victor, because everybody waits to see what Victor thinks.
Yeah.
Fully expecting him to go, no, what is this? Take this away. But he didn't. He didn't.
Well, not even to take this away, but just similar to what happens later on with Mrs. Garrett, where he's like, oh, yeah, it's good.
I'll eat it, but
I'll eat it. It's good. Or have him say something's different or whatever, but then blow it off with, who cares? He's Cookie Monster with pizzas. But yeah, again, it leads to, it does bait the question, what college frat boys are connoisseurs to the point they're going to be like, I detect that this sauce doesn't have homegrown oregano in it. It's no.
Well, what's the old line of pizza's like sex? Even when it's bad, it's still pretty good.
Oh, damn right. Yes. at least if memory serves. But anyway. So then we go back to the living room, and now we've got Joe on the phone taking an order, and we're basically, this is the scene to say business is growing now that Joe has found this new workaround with the prefabbing and the streamlining of production. And Joe starts talking like too big for her britches. Well, we are the official pizza of the Langley Trivial Pursuit League. And Natalie says, Joe, the way you did this, you're a genius. And Joe's like, oh, I'm not a genius. I just, turned it into a campus institution, and they've asked me to lecture, and, well, I'm not a genius. I'll probably end up on the cover of Time. And she's talking like Blair. Like, that's all you would need to do to pop that balloon is like, you're talking like Blair, Joe. Shut up.
This isn't you.
Yeah. So then we go to the kitchen, where there is just this lone pizza sitting on the counter. And in creeps Mrs. Garrett, and we have this physical shtick of her seeing the pizza and being tempted, but no, and walking away. No. And so then finally she eats a slice. And Joe has joined her at this point, and her reaction's really good because it's like, oh. And Joe's like, what? And she's like, I mean, it's not bad, but it just doesn't taste as good. And she innocently says, this is your mom's recipe, right? And Joe's like, almost. And then Mrs. Garrett's like, this is frozen pizza crust, isn't it? And Joe says, oh, the girls blabbed to you. And she says, no, I can taste freezer burn. And it is funny because Mrs. Garrett, as opposed to what is going on here, she's acting like she's accusing Joe of a crime. You see what I mean? It's like, and I don't taste 3 cheeses. But it basically builds up to, have you tasted this yourself, Joe? And she's like, yeah, it's not quite as good, but it's the same idea. And then in comes Blair. She just came from the silk screeners, where they printed up some Mama Rosa's pizza boxes with the likeness of Joe's mother, and that is Claire Malice. That's absolutely the image of Joe's mother. And Blair says she drew it from the picture on Joe's nightstand or something like that. And that is canon because Blair is the artistic one of all of them. She has been painting, sketching, drawing, and they unfortunately don't carry it through to the end of the series. It gets abandoned and is only sporadically peppered into her character throughout. But this is a nice moment where it's like, yep, that's right. If you needed somebody to draw something, Blair would be the person to do it. So good work, writers. We'll tip the hat again there. But then it becomes Mrs. Garrett saying, why did you start doing this? Isn't it because you wanted people to taste your mother's amazing pizza? And is this really what you want? Her image is going to be on the product. And it's the moment where it's the Mrs. Garrett giving the wisdom. And
the very special episode that no young woman should miss.
Yes.
Yes.
And then Joe finally does taste it. And Joe alludes to the fact that it doesn't taste very good. And finally, this is okay. If I'm going to do my mom's pizza, I'm going to do it right. And then does Hack come back? The guys did mention something about the flavor. So Hack has come back into this scene.
Yeah, he comes back and he says that it wasn't, but because of his love of Joe.
Yeah.
It overshadows that the pizza doesn't taste as good anymore. And so he tells she said, didn't you notice it tasting different? He said, yeah, it did. Did the other guys notice that it tasted different? Did they not like it? And he said, I told them to like it.
Yes.
Something like that. I told them it was good.
Yeah, and they said something about the flavor. Then I talked to them and they like it now.
Yeah.
So there was kind of an imposing, threatening component as to why they've been having Joe's pizza. So, well, Joe says, well, no more. You're going to get back to the original. And as Joe starts to list off the ingredients, and again, I'm doing my Bowser from Sha Na Na here. You're going to get 3 kinds of hand shredded cheeses and chunks of pure Italian sausage and chunks of sweet, fresh cut tomatoes. At which point, Mrs. Garrett has to interject with the big, funny final line of the episode. Do you remember the line, Rob?
There goes my diet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is that your Mrs. Garrett impression?
Well, I mean, yeah, it was a go at it. It was a go.
It was lovely. You knew you were free to do so at any time if you were inspired.
Yeah.
But yes, that was lovely. I like that, Mrs. Garrett. So the big final thing is, oh, Mrs. Garrett and this diet that you've never been on before and will never be on again.
Freeze frame.
Yeah, freeze frame.
Freeze frame, roll credits.
Okay. I mean, so many of the Facts of Life episodes are these great ideas that just get mucked up in the execution. And I want to do one more thing before we go. Speaking of mucking it up, I have to say, now that we've gone through it all, I went back and made notes because there were so many twists and turns.
Yes.
In this episode over what is the lesson of the show going to be, because it seemed to keep changing gears. Do you agree with me?
I literally have written down on my notes, what's the moral? Question mark. And I have 3 different things. Is it about overextending yourself? Mm-hmm. Is it about responsibility and honesty? Is it about quality of your product and making what you said you were going to make and doing it? Like, you're absolutely right. It goes in all these different directions.
And I'll add to your list by saying, is it Joe getting dragged into something she doesn't want to do? Because it's Natalie who says, we're in business. Come on, let's do it. Joe is reticent. Natalie's the one that kind of pushes her toward it. Is it about Joe being a lousy boss? When we had that scene with all the talk I've done about that, could it have been that, oh, I see. And okay, let's stop here and say, so is this good that the show kept changing gears? Because every time I hit an expectation, it would do something different. My thought was, oh, okay, what's going to happen is the business is going to be fine, but Joe is going to become a miserable despot that the girls hate working for. And the lesson is going to be about Joe being a lousy boss.
Right.
But that's not what it is. Then it is, is it about Natalie stealing Tootie's money? and she says, Tootie explicitly says, how could you violate my trust? I was saving that money for a cashmere sweater. So this is a violation of trust episode. That's what it's going to be. Nope. Is it about we're going to be rich? Is it putting the cart before the horse? Is it getting too big for your britches? Like you said, dishonesty, integrity, honoring your family's traditions, being a realist about your limitations. There's so many different littler themes coming into play. And typically in a 25-minute sitcom, you kind of need to hone in and focus and support one or two of those maximum.
Well, again, in the story that I'm telling myself, I wonder in the writer's room if they're just like, okay, here's our jumping off point. Let's write until we get to 24 minutes.
Yes.
And sorry, we're short. We're only at 16 minutes. Yeah, but the story's finished. Well, it can't be anymore. So let's, when somebody should say yes, let's have them say no. When they should say no, let's have them say yes. And let's see where the story goes from there. And they just keep building on it and building on it. And so I do wonder if it was just they just needed to fill the time. And so they kept coming to finishing points, but realizing, oh no, we need to.
This is the next,
more.
Add something else. Throw another ingredient onto the pie. You see what I did?
I do. I did write down my favorite line from the whole thing. It's there toward the end. And it made both my wife and I, as we watched this episode together, we both looked up and looked at each other like, well, that's a odd line. Mrs. Garrett says there at the end, are you sure this is what you want under your mother's face?
I totally missed that. Wow.
Yeah.
For all the unintended sexual things going on. Wow.
Yeah, I as I recall, I mean, the censors were pretty strict in the 80s. I'm surprised that one slipped right by them.
And we joke about all the lesbianic overtones with the Joe Blair relationship. So, Joe, do you really think your mother would want her face on this pie? So, keeping it classy right there. On that note, we can't top it right there. We cannot go any further or do any better. Rob, this has been so amazing to actually talk with you. It would have been even better if we could have done it face to face, but this has been so fun nonetheless.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. And yeah, I'm happy to get to know you better. Again, we've just been kind of actor ships passing in the night. And, so I was happy to do this.
This was great. Now we need to work together. That needs to be our next goal of our creative leadership, is to creatively lead ourselves toward a project that we can work on together.
Agreed. I'm on board.
Yes. All right. Well, Rob, thank you again so much, my dear. Smooches and goodbye.
Goodbye.
And there you have it. That was Rob Lott. Now, shockingly, there are a couple of points I did not make in that show. I wanted to point out, first of all, one of the frat guys at the frat house, just an extra, doesn't have any lines. He is a regular extra. We've seen him in other crowd scenes at Langley. If you look back to season 5, episode 19, Star at Langley, that was when I had James Brendlinger on, I pointed out that there was a male student and a female student that we had seen before and were clearly recurring extras. The guy is the same one. He's also one of the dudes hanging around the poker table in this, so I'm going to definitely be keeping my eyes peeled to see if I see him in any other episodes. Secondly, I didn't get a chance to say Hack, the character that Tony Longo plays. Hack is such a weird nickname. And then to say that it's short for hacksaw. Have you ever seen a hacksaw? I know a lot of you are homos out there like I am, and maybe you haven't, but the hacksaw is that U-shaped metal saw with the very long, skinny, slight blade that you can replace and remove. And it's for little fine cutting, like if you have to cut off the end of a bolt or something. A hacksaw is not a big, manly tool. A hacksaw is arguably one of the slightest and daintiest of all the tools. So it's just nothing here is adding up. Considering in the 1980s, we had characters like Moose and Ogre and Meat, all these names that evoked something about the characters where they were just these big, oversized dudes. Bad writing, bad nickname. That needs a rewrite. Writers, please get on it. And lastly, as I was going through my list of potential themes and potential lessons and how there were so many possible ones cramped into this episode, there was one that I missed saying, was that when Joe is talking to Blair and says, I was nuts to think I could run a pizza operation and go to school, I half expected Joe to say to Blair, and that's why I'm quitting school. That would have been such a typical sitcom-y thing, wouldn't it? Be like, nope, I don't need to go to school anymore. This pizza endeavor is my ticket to success and being a multi-kabillionaire, selling pizzas out of Mrs. Garrett's kitchen. Anyhow, I just wanted to say that and get that out of my system, and now, okay, I can shake it off. Next week, I'm going to be watching Season 6, Episode 3, called Love at First Byte. That's B-Y-T-E. Oh, I see what they did there. And the original air date was October 17th of 1984. You can watch the show for free on the Roku channel or at dailymotion.com. I will post links in the show notes and on this episode's webpage. That is all for now. Thank you so much to my 3 new Tutti Fruities. Thank you to you for listening to the show. And remember, the facts of life are all about you. Let's Face the Facts was produced, written, hosted, and edited by me, David Almeida. My theme song was beautifully arranged and recorded by Ned Wilkinson. Our website is facethefactspod.com. You have to drop the lets. And that's where you can find extra pictures, video, and audio extras from the digital cutting room floor. Follow the show on social media. We're everywhere under the handle Face the Facts Pod. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/FaceTheFactsPod. And don't forget, go to your favorite podcatchers and subscribe, rate, and review. Tune in again next week for another thrilling episode of Let's Face the Facts.